Cove of seasons. Summer was dead, but autumn had not yet been born, but the ibis lit in a bleeding tree. The last graveyard flowers were blooming, and their smell drifted across the cotton fields and through every room of our house, speaking softly the names of our dead. Sometimes, like right now as I sit in the cool green-draped parlor, I remember Doodle. Family, bound by blood and affection. Those we should treat with love and care. A man reflects back on past prejudices and embarrassment toward his brother and James Hurst's the Scarlet Ibis. Doodle was just about the craziest brother a boy ever had. He was born when I was 6 and was from the outset a disappointment. He seemed all head with a tiny body and everyone thought he was gonna die. Daddy even built a little mahogany coffin for him, but he didn't die. And when he was 3 months old, Mama and Daddy decided they might as well name him William Armstrong. Such a name sounds good only on a tombstone. I thought myself pretty smart in many things, like running, jumping, holding my breath, climbing trees. I wanted someone to race the horse to have landing with. I wanted someone to box with. I wanted a brother. But Mama told me that even if William Armstrong did survive, he might not be able to do all of these things. He might not even be all there. Having an invalid brother was bad enough, but having a brother who wasn't possibly all there was unbearable. So I began to make plans to kill him by smothering him with a pillow. However, one afternoon as I sat, my head poked through the iron post to the foot of the bed, Doodle looked right at me and grinned. "Mama, he's all there, he's all there!" And he was. When Doodle began crawling, I renamed him. When he crawled backwards as if he were reverse and couldn't change gears. It made him look like a doodlebug, so I called him Doodle. Renaming him was perhaps the kindest thing I ever did for him, because nobody expects much from someone called Doodle. Daddy built him a little go-kart that I had to haul him around in all the time. The doctor said he mustn't get too excited, too hot, too cold, or too tired, and he must always be treated gently. He was a burden in many ways. There is inside me a knot of cruelty, born by the stream of love, and at times I was mean to Doodle. One time I showed him his casket, telling him how we all believed he would die, and when I made him touch it, he clung to me. "Don't leave me, brother, don't leave me!" When Doodle was 5 years old, I was ashamed of having a brother of that age who couldn't even walk, so I set out to teach him. We were down an old woman's swamp. "I'm gonna teach you to walk, Doodle." "But why?" "So I don't have to haul you around all the time." "But I can't walk, brother. Mama, the doctor, everybody says, oh, you can walk." I grabbed him by his arms, and I picked him up, and he collapsed to the ground like a half-empty flour sack. "Don't hurt me, brother. I just can't do it." "Yes, you can, Doodle. All you gotta do is try." I hauled him up once more. It seemed so hopeless that it's a miracle I didn't give up, but all of us must have something to be proud of, and Doodle had become my something. Finally, one day, he stood alone for a few seconds, and when he fell, I grabbed him in my arms and I hugged him, our laughter ringing through the swamp like a bell. Now we knew it could be done. At lunch one morning, I brought Doodle to the door. There wasn't a sound as he walked slowly across the room and sat down at the dining room table. Mama began to cry, and Daddy hugged him, and Doodle told them that it was I who had taught him how to walk, so they wanted to hug me, and I began to cry. They didn't know that I did it just for myself. That Doodle only walked because I was ashamed of having a crippled brother. Since I had succeeded, I started to believe in my own infallibility. I decided to teach him to run, to row, to swim, to climb trees, and to fight, but Doodle couldn't keep up with the plan. One time, he collapsed to the ground and started crying. "Oh, come on, Doodle. You want to be different from everybody else when you start school." As we slipped through the dog days, Doodle began to look feverish. Mama felt his forehead, asking him if he felt ill, and at night he didn't sleep well. Sometimes he had nightmares, crying out until I touched him. "Wake up, Doodle, wake up!" Just a few days before school was to start, I should have already admitted my own defeat, but my pride wouldn't let Too late now, for we had both wandered too far into the net of expectations and left no crumbs behind. And so, we came to those days when summer was dead, but autumn had not yet been born. Daddy, Mama, Doodle, and I were seated at the dining room table having lunch. Suddenly, from out in the yard came a strange croaking noise, and Doodle stopped eating. "What's that?" Doodle slipped out into the yard and looked up into the bleeding tree. "It's a big red bird!" The bird croaked loudly again, and Mom and Daddy came out into the yard. "It looks tired, or maybe sick. It's not even frightened of us." At that moment, the bird began to flutter, but amidst much flapping and a spray of flying feathers, the bird tumbled through the limbs of the bleeding tree and landed at our feet with a thud. "It's a scarlet ibis." Scarlet ibis. How many miles had it traveled to die like this in our yard, beneath the bleeding tree? "I'm gonna bury him." "Don't you dare touch that bird. There's no telling what diseases he might have had." "All right, I won't." After, it was time for a swimming lesson. Doodle still had a long way to go. When we reached Horsehead Landing, lightning was flashing and thunder was drowning out the sounds of the sea. Doodle was tired and frightened. He slipped on the mud and fell. He had failed, and we both knew it. He would never be like the other boys at school. We started back home, racing the storm. We never spoke. What are the words that can solder cracked pride? I knew he was watching me, watching for a sign of mercy. The lightning was near now, and from fear he walked so close behind me he was stepping on my heels. The faster I walked, the faster he walked, so I began to run, and I heard Doodle cry out, "Don't leave me, brother! Don't leave me!" The knowledge that our plans had come to nothing was bitter, and that shriek of cruelty within me awakened, and I ran as fast as I could, leaving him far behind with the wall of rain dividing us. I hadn't run too far before I became tired, and the flood of childish spite evanesced as well. I stopped. I waited for Doodle. Finally, I went back. He was sitting on the ground, his head buried in his arms. "Let's go, Doodle." He didn't answer, so I gently lifted his head, and he toppled backward onto the earth. He'd been bleeding from the mouth, and his neck and the front of his shirt were stained a brilliant red. "Doodle! Doodle! Doodle! Come on, Doodle! Doodle!" I screamed above the pounding storm and threw my body to the earth above his. It seemed forever I lay there crying, sheltering my fallen scarlet ibis.